quickly, and I see a lot of familiar faces from last week. So if you have already seen this, it's about the same. The first thing is that when you joined the session, your phone was probably put automatically on mute, or you may have put yourself on mute. If you do have questions, you are welcome to take yourself off mute and ask your questions out loud, or you can just ask your questions in the chat, which is kind of nice because that way I can kind of queue them up and get them all answered all at once. But please do ask questions. It's a great time to get your questions answered as long as we're all here together. Another thing I want to mention is that everybody's CPQ environment looks very different on the front end. It's a very, very customizable system. The system I am using is more or less out of the box. So if you see any differences between your system or your client or partner system and mine, it's because yours is probably customized and mine is not. We'll have a job aid available for you. You can get to it after the session is over, actually probably tomorrow. What we do is when we record sessions within 24 hours, we post them to an instant replay within Callidus Cloud University. And when you get over there, you'll see an additional resources tab that has the job aid attached as a PDF. It's just a one-pager with sort of a summary of what we're going to be talking about today. But take notes, ask questions, and let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to be doing, as you can see, we have a lot to cover in just an hour. Talking about the different types of integration and kind of how people integrate CPQ with other systems and what they integrate with. We're going to spend a little bit of time focusing on integrating specifically with C4C, but we'll also talk about custom integrations or other integration types that you can use to kind of expand on CPQ's abilities. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about custom actions. So those are those times when you just have to do something with an integration that's so customized that you're just not going to be able to do it with the out-of-box product. So you write some JavaScript and attach it to a custom action and have it integrate that way. You know, it looks here like we have a section for Q&A, but please feel free to ask questions throughout the session. I'll try to leave some time at the end, but sometimes it gets a little tight because at the end I always like to wrap up with some of the resources you have at your disposal to learn more. But before we get into the topic at hand, I have a question for you. And you can answer this in the chat. I'll give you about 30 seconds or so to get this done. What type of integration or with what products will you be integrating CPQ with yourself, or have you already been integrating it with? Or if there's nothing in particular, you could just put, well, whatever. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to answer that in the chat. Okay, we've got a couple of them already. We've got one SAP C4C, perfect. Okay, we've got one with Salesforce, another one SFDC, so Salesforce. Okay, fantastic. I'll give you guys a few minutes for the rest of you to toss up some answers here too and see what else we're looking at. Okay, SAP CRM and e-commerce. Okay, so excellent. ECC. Good. All right, let's see if anybody has any others. And if you're not, sometimes I have people who are just here to learn. Maybe they're on the sales or sales engineering side, and they just want to see what's going on. They're not doing any integrations of their own. And it's nice when they toss up something as well, saying, I don't know, just here to learn. So, okay, any other ERP or CRM systems? Fantastic. Okay. So I get the impression that everybody here is pretty comfortable with the different systems that you can integrate CPQ with, but I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about this anyway, partially because a lot of it because also this is being recorded. So I want to make sure that those watching the recording are able to see this as well. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about sort of the overall data integration process. Now, CPQ can be used as a standalone product, right? You could just implement CPQ and say, this is the product that we log into to select and configure our products and suggest cross-sells and upsells. We can store all of our pricing and discount and customer and user information right within the system. And CPQ can handle all of that, but usually it is tied in with a CRM. Right now, CRM, by the way, stands for Customer Relationship Management, and examples of CRMs would be some of the ones that you guys put up there, right? SAP CRM, which is the enterprise on-premise product, as well as C4C, Salesforce, Microsoft CRM, and I think we have a couple of, quite a few others as well. So in the CRM, usually this is where the sales rep really starts, right? They log into the CRM, and that's where all the master data would be, like information about the customers, the accounts, and then they would go into the CRM to create their new opportunities and track all their sales activities and do reporting and so on. And what happens with CPQ is there will be a button somewhere in the CRM that says something like start a quote or create a quote. And when they click that button, CPQ is started as an iframe right there within the CRM. So they can go in and select and configure their product. And then once they say, okay, I'm ready to generate a quote, now an opportunity is created back here in the CRM. Right, so what the goal really is to make the process as seamless as possible for the sales rep, while also taking advantage of all the features of CPQ so that they can do the, didn't know what it stands for, configure, price, and quote the product. Yeah, let's go ahead and see. It looks like we have somebody. I'm going to go ahead and mute you. There we go. Just keep some of that noise off the phone when we have a lot of people here. Now, not every organization also integrates CPQ with an enterprise resource planning product, but you can. So if CPQ is integrated with an ERP, then what can happen is once the purchase is made, the fulfillment information can be sent over to an ERP. So once again, there's master data about the inventories there. They can take the product order, handle fulfillment, manage the order, handle things on the finance side, and so on. So options for integrating with an ERP would be both SAP products such as SAP ERP or S4 ERP, and you can also integrate with a third-party ERP. So we'll look at both of those. Now, there are other types of products and applications that CPQ can be integrated with as well. So in addition to SAP Sales Cloud products, so C4C, CRM, and S4 ERP, whoops, where did we go? Went backward there. There, that's better. Any other CRM, right? We also have a product called Contract Lifecycle Management, or CLM for short. CLM is a product that came over to SAP from as part of what is now called the SAP Sales Cloud. This is a product that is used a lot on the legal side. It allows users to get notification and approvals and audit tracking related to the contract that's generated as a result of the opportunity or the sale. So, for example, a sale is made, and the purchaser maybe signs off on it, and then it goes over to somebody internally, like maybe the director of finance will sign off on it. And so it's a sort of like a contract workflow application. Also can be standalone, but can also be integrated with CPQ. And then we have a couple of other things you can do. Another thing that you can do even if you don't need to use a contract lifecycle management, you might want to at least make it easier for your customers to use electronic signatures. So you can also integrate CPQ with Adobe Sign or DocuSign. It's pretty straightforward to do that. I'll show you how that's done as well. Okay, so I know you guys were all paying attention during that last part, but here's a quick little knowledge check for you. Who can tell me in the chat what was the most common type of integration with CPQ that I just mentioned? Give you guys a minute for that one. CRM, excellent. Yep, we had a couple of people throw that up all at the same time. Yep, most common type of integration is with a CRM system, but you can also integrate with a bunch of other types of systems as well. So that's why we're going to take a closer look first at integrating CPQ with CRMs. And what we'll start with is integrating with with SAP C4C and with S4 ERP. So the idea is, as I mentioned, is we're just streamlining the sales cycle. We're making it easier for our sales reps to enter information into the system. And the most seamless is with C4C, as you'll see, because it's pretty much built into the system. But let me show you what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is jump into my CPQ system, which is right here. I'm going to go ahead and log in. Oops. There we go. Didn't like that. Let's go ahead and do that again. It always gets a little grumpy when I do that too far in advance. Oops. There we go. Okay, now we're logged in. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the Setup menu and go into Setup. And if you look down on the menus and submenus over on the left-hand side, you might notice one here called CRM Integration, and you think, that must be where I'm supposed to do this. But we're going to come back to that one. That's only for custom integrations. What we're going to do first is go down here to Providers. This is where you do the integration with SAP Sales Cloud products. So if I expand Providers and then select the Providers submenu, it's the only submenu there, you'll see couple of things I mentioned earlier, like Adobe Sign and DocuSign and CLM, but what we're going to do is click on SAP. Now, in your implementation, you may see more providers. The only one I have here is the cloud platform, but that could be different. I'm just going to use the one for the cloud platform for C4C for this one. So we'll go ahead and check that. And the three tabs across the top are Common Settings, Settings for C4C, CRM, and Settings for S4 ERP. So looking at the common settings, first of all, of course, the first thing you want to do is just turn on Enable Integration. Okay, so we'll just turn that on. Okay, C4C and S4 have two authentication modes, basic authentication and SAML. I'm going to use a hybrid so that we can use either one. And then the next thing it needs to know is just how are we going to get to it, right? So you would know, before you went in here, you'd want to make sure that you knew the username and password for integration with the C4C or S4 system. In this case, I'm not actually going to be integrating with a real system, so I'm just going to put in a dummy username and password for what we're doing here. So we'll just choose the same thing I was using for CPQ. Okay. One thing I want to mention about this is that as I go through some of the demos, you'll see places where I can click on an option that gives me a drop-down list of fields within the CRM, and I won't see those because I'm not actually integrating with the true CRM. So I'll point those out as we go. Going down to the general settings, two very handy little checks here. Send customers along with quote payload. In general, you probably are going to have that turned on because most likely, if you're integrating with a CRM, your customer information will be stored primarily in the CRM. What send customers along with quote payload does is when you send the quote data back to the SAP system or to the CRM system, if you made any changes to the customer data, it sends those back over to the CRM itself. So it basically makes sure that you don't have to double enter any changes to your customers. So I'm going to leave that one on. Send prices in the selected market. What this one does is so both the CRM and CPQ have markets, have a place where you can keep track of markets and price books. If you are basically what this does is if you have this disabled, then the prices are calculated using the market in CPQ. And if it's enabled, then it uses the market. The price is calculated using the market in the CRM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this turned off. Okay. The next item, dates and quote standard fields. I have two choices here. Okay. What you're doing here is you're telling the system which time zone to convert your dates into, either the time zone used by the current user or the time zone used by the server. Which one is safer here? It's probably the time zone used by the server. I would say that maybe one example of where this might be handy is if you are really getting down to the last few hours of the month or the quarter, and any quotes that are say closed, or opportunities that are closed and turned into sales by midnight, let's say Eastern Standard Time, will be counted for the current month. If that's the case, then you would want to use the UTC zone, right, which would be Eastern Standard. If you used user zone and you had a user that was on the West Coast, then they would have 3 more hours, basically. So whichever one fits for you, that's what you want to set there. Now, everything else you're going to see here are just API endpoints. So we have a couple of general API endpoints that have to do with anything to do with cloud platform integration. So REST API-based URLs, the endpoint for SAP object data details, XML details, and so on. I'm going to go ahead and save this. One point here is that whenever you see a system in CPQ where you have tabs like this, make sure when you make changes on any one tab that you save it, because if you just continue on to the next tab, it's not going to save your changes. So I'm going to save that. Let's take a quick look at the other C4C CRM settings. Again, these are all just API endpoints. So you can look down through here. You'll see again the Cloud Platform Integration Service APIs, opportunity details when landing on a quote, and so on. I'll just scroll down. You'll see there are about a dozen of these. I'm not going to make any changes to these. So in general, you probably are going to want to leave these at the default unless you have a specific reason that you need to change them. Now on the S4 ERP side, there's only one endpoint, and that is the Cloud Platform Integration Service. So there's one on the common settings, one on the CRM settings, one on the ERP settings that are all the same. So in general, for the most part, the setup is pretty straightforward because the system knows exactly what to do, right? It knows what fields go where and so on. And that's how you would go about setting up integration with either C4C or SAP SAP C4, S4 ERP. So before I move on, does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. So what I'm going to be moving on to next is an overview of what you can do if you want to integrate with some other CRM or some other ERP platform, or really any other platform. If you do have any questions as we go, as I mentioned, just don't hesitate to toss them up in the chat window and I'll stop and cover them as we go. So let's jump back over to the slides for a moment just to kind of get an idea of where we are. Okay, so if you want to integrate with any other CRM application, including SAP CRM or SAP ERP, you can do so under the CRM integration. And actually, while we were going, I had a good little question that came up here. The question is, are there standard artifacts of SCP? And the answer is that yes, there are. Yes, there are, and those you'll see on the in the next section where we talk about custom integration. So let me show you what that looks like. So there are several steps to integrating CPQ with another platform, with another application. The first thing is you would go into the CRM integration section. You select a CRM application from the list, enter the administrator account information, and then you're going to set up a bunch of different mappings. And this is a list of all the different things you want to map. So the quote fields to the opportunity, customer roles to the account or contact, quote status to the opportunity status, market to the price book, and then user information. Now, one thing I want to point out here is that all of these arrows are pointing in both directions with the exception of the status. And that's just because one thing that will happen solely on the CPQ side is the status of a quote, which would be used to update the status of the opportunity on the CRM side. Now, I'm going to go through these somewhat quickly. Really what I want you to see from this is just what it looks like, so that you can then go through it. So let's jump into what CRM integration looks like for another application. And what I'll use as my example here is, since a couple of you mentioned that you're using SAP CRM, that's the one I'll use. So I'm going to go to CRM integration. And the first thing I'm going to do is go down to the last submenu, which is General. And you'll see here we have, these are my choices, right? None, Salesforce, Microsoft CRM, and so on. Now, a couple of you did mention you're also that you're using Salesforce, so I'll show you both of those really quickly. So SAP CRM is definitely the most straightforward because the system they're both SAP systems, so there's not as much customization that has to happen. Quick look here at Salesforce, and you'll see that we have quite a bit more information that you can use here. For example, do I want to enable Lightning user interface? What edition of Salesforce am I using? I need a security password. You can have a secret key if you want. And you can take a look down here and just see all the other settings. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these just because, you see, it would take a while. And it all depends, of course, on what version of Salesforce you're using and whether or not this is what you're using. So what I'm going to do, but I wanted you to get a look at that. What I'm going to do is switch this back over to SAP CRM. And here there are really only two settings. One is when you're editing quotes on the opportunity side, do you want to also optimize setting of customer roles, which generally I'm going to leave that at false. Now, another thing you can do is you can pick whether you want all of your product types to be included in the CRM opportunity or if there are any that you don't. Like, for example, in this case, I have a product type called training that I say, well, you know, if I'm using this product type called training, maybe that's just used for testing, or maybe for a sandbox or something like that. So if I do create a quote that uses that product type, it's not going to create an opportunity on the CRM. And you can just pick them by moving them over here, for example, or moving them back. All right, so that's the first step, right? I just go to General and tell it what system and pick my product types. Set whatever other settings the system wants. We go ahead and save that change. Okay, so that's the first thing I need to do. The second thing I need to do is tell the system how to get there. What are the credentials? So for that, I'm going to go up one step here to the CRM administrator account. And this is where I can add my login credentials. So in this case, you can see I already have a couple set up. I'm going to go ahead and add a new one. Okay, and again, I select my CRM name. Let's say here I'm going to choose my SAP CRM. I'll put in an account username of, let's say, well, you'll go ahead and use my own login and some password, and indicate here whether it's an administrator account, and then just save it. Now you can see here that I can have as many administrator accounts as I want, and an example of when you might do that is if you want to be able to integrate or use one login maybe for a sandbox or development environment, and another one for production, or if you have several different administrators that need to be able to log in different ways. So I would just add my administrator account here. If I have one I don't need to use, I can just delete it here or make changes. I'll go ahead and delete this one. So now I'm down to the 2. So once I've told the system what type of system I'm integrating with and how to get to it, then I can go to the mappings. Now I can do these mappings in any order. I've been starting at the bottom and working my way up. So now what I think I'll do is I'll start at the top and work my way down. So let's take a look at custom fields mappings. So as you can imagine, even if the two systems know very well how to speak to each other, you're probably going to have custom fields on both sides, both on the CPQ side and on the CRM side. So you're going to want to have a place where you can tell the system which custom fields map with which other fields and what to do when they're changed. So the first thing I want to point out here is that this is a two-way street, right? We have one tab where you can choose when I creating a quote or updating a quote from the CRM, or starting from CPQ, creating or updating an opportunity, right? So I can go either way. So coming from the CRM or coming from CPQ. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to say, coming from CPQ, if maybe I have a custom field and I want to map it with another field in an opportunity in the CRM. So I'm going to click on that second tab, click Add New to create a new mapping. I get to choose, first of all, what event, right? Do I want this to happen when I'm creating a new quote, or if I'm updating a quote, or either one? I like either one, whether I'm creating or updating a quote. I want to update the CRM opportunity. So I'm going to choose Object, Create, Update. Now, over here on the left, when you see this icon, this is the CPQ icon, right? It looks like a little stack of dollar bills, right? So that means this is CPQ. This over here is my CRM, right? This is SAP CRM. Now, we have two different things you can do here. You can choose a custom quote field. Now, custom quote fields are just that. They're simply custom fields that have been created to appear on your quote. And I have a fairly long list of them here, right? So, for example, let's say that I want to use this custom field called discount calc, right? It calculates a custom discount for me. So if I select that custom field, then I can choose another field over here. Now, another thing I can do, it doesn't necessarily have to be a custom field. If it's just a custom mapping, is I can use a standard quote field. But standard quote fields aren't just going to give me a list, because I have a lot of different fields coming from different tables. It's much more complex than something I can just show in a list. But what I can do is I can click on the formula builder, which is this little icon right here. And I can go into my tags. So I can either select a tag or a tag that has subtags and select a field that way. So for example, if I want to find, let's say, the company name, right? The company name is under company info. So if I select company info, it gives me a list of all the parameters of company information, including, and it's going to be kind of far down the bottom here, the company name, which is right there, right? So what I want you to see from this is that you don't just have to use this for specifically custom fields. You can use it for any custom field mapping, even if it's an existing field. But I'm not going to use this. I want to use the custom field. So I'm going to go to custom quote fields and go back and choose that field I selected a moment ago, discount calc. And then over here on the CRM objects, you can see here my arrow is pointing to the right. This is so from CPQ to the CRM. I can choose any number of CRM objects, the opportunity itself, or the opportunity account, or, for example, if I wanted to map information from the customer or the user side. But I want to update the opportunity. And let's say on the opportunity I have a field called discount amount that's like this. Now you can also use CRM lookup, but for me that's not going to work because I'm not actually looking at a real CRM. But if you clicked on this, it will give you a list of fields in the CRM or a picker from here. Right now I see a blank screen, so I'm just going to close that. I could also just put in the field here. So another question here, from where the CRM fields, where was that? From where the CRM fields are appearing here in the drop down, this one, you're talking about this one right here, right? Where do we see the CRM custom field? Now, if you're talking about this drop down right here, you don't see a CRM custom field, right? These are the objects. So the opportunity, the build to role, the first role, the primary role, things like that. The fields would be here under the CRM lookup. And of course, what I'm seeing here, I won't see anything, but you would see them in this window right here, depending on the type of CRM you're looking at. Does that answer your question? Is that what you were asking? No. Okay. It says no. Okay. Sorry. Can you clarify? Do all the customer fields of the CR or all the custom fields in the CRM, will they be available in that list? Sorry, I can't talk. Will they be available in that list? Yes, they will. Sorry, that wasn't a clarification on that one. That was another question. So this is a different question. Are all the custom fields in the CRM available in that list? Yes, if the CRM has custom fields set up, then you'll see them all in that list. Okay, so I wanted to get a clarification on that other question on the CRM fields. Let's see. Okay, so the clarification on that second one is, where do we find the linkage of CRM? So just to make sure I'm answering your question, the term linkage here, I think I'm going to have to make a guess on what it is that you're asking for. This is assuming we've already connected the system to a CRM. We've already told it, okay, this is the CRM we're using, and this is how we're going to log into it, right? What you'll see here in that CRM lookup is going to be different depending on what type of CRM you're using. And this is where it would be, but I'm afraid that that's probably not the answer to your question, because that was what I had said before. So I think I might have to ask you if you can clarify it a little bit more, or maybe a lot more. But in the meantime,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Okay, yeah, this might be better. Go ahead.
That's good. Yeah. So my question is, like, these fields that you see here in CRM lookup, so where do we have the linkage available? Because these fields are coming over. I see like opportunities related CRM object, but from where, like, we might have like so many custom fields from CRM side, or we might have few of them standard as well.
Yeah.
But what we see, like the CRM and other objects, from where these objects are coming over? Is it from the provider, the URL that we have provided, or is it somewhere else? Or do we have a config? Where do we mention these details?
Well, so it's okay. I understand your question. So you're not talking about how you.
Yeah, because I was going through the document like SCP. That's an SCP HANA Cloud Portal, where you have like a different middleware setup. You provide the iFlow and the other things in the provider. It's not actual CRM. It's like iFlow URL you are providing, like the web service.
Yeah.
So there's one URL that's not related to all of them. All of them, I mean, the iFlow might have, there might have different artifact available in the SCP, but the linkage that we are providing, it's one system, and then that particular SCP might be connected with 10 different applications. One could be CPQ, another, there might be CRM, S4, or any other else.
Right.
But these fields, I don't find the linkage. Where do I find these objects are coming over, so we can, okay, this is a placeholder, or this is a place we have provided the URL, or maybe the configuration we go and mention that, then the linkage will happen. It will talk to system one, system like CPQ. These are the fields that we could see. And these are like CRM, where we have mentioned, okay, this is a URL, and from this URL it is fetching. Okay. Or these are the configuration, it is fetching from this side. Where do
Okay.
you find that?
Okay. I understand. Thank you for clarifying. So it actually is going to vary based on what type of CRM you're using. But I think I don't think I can give you a really comprehensive answer to that right now. Would it be okay with you if I followed up on that? I'd like to go back and find out if I can see if I can get you a more comprehensive answer. I can do it offline. I'm sure that a lot of people who are here might be interested in what the answer is as well. So
Sure. I'm specific to like C4C because that's the base integration that you have available.
Yeah.
So if it clarifies like for C4C because both are SAP product, then it clarifies like the others as well. So you can go back and check the answers. That should be okay.
I will, and I'll follow up. And when I do, what I'll do, if anybody else here is interested, is I'll include the rest of you in the answer as well, because that is a very good question. I'd like to get the answer for you. So yeah, okay. Well, yeah, don't worry, Hossein. I'll just include everybody. How's that? So yeah, that is a good question. Thank you. But so the quick answer is that it's going to be different depending on the what CRM you're using. But I think I'd like to have the answer specifically regarding C4C. Okay, so before I move on, does anybody have any other questions so far? All right. Okay, so what we were doing here is we're mapping a custom field, right? So I picked a custom field on the CPQ side, selected a custom field or an existing field on the CRM side, and I can create as many of these mappings as I want, right? I just keep on clicking Add New, and I can add some that are coming from the CRM to CPQ and some vice versa. Customer roles is the next one. So I'm just going through the rest of these fairly quickly. Customer roles, by the way, there are actually 3 different types of customer roles. And again, we can go from the CRM or from CPQ, either way. And again, I'll go from CPQ. We have 2 roles that have to do with the account itself, right? The bill to address and the ship to address. And then we have a third one that's specifically related to the end user. So in this case, let's say that, how do we map some information from the bill to address in CPQ to the CRM? And what I would do here is I would say, okay, what type of account, right? And you can see we have several. We have just the opportunity, we have the partner role account, the bill to, and the ship to. We have the contact information, and then we have what event. And again, do we map this just when it's created, just when it's updated, or both? And then you click Continue to Field Level Mappings so that you can customize the mappings of the fields themselves. So for example, on the CPQ side, first name has a space in the field, whereas on the CRM, maybe it doesn't, so it's just first name. Maybe what I'll do here is I'll say that for the company, instead of just having the word name, we'll put, sorry, I can't type here, company name, something like that, right? Whatever the field name would be on the CRM side. When you're done, before you click back to object level mapping options, again, just don't forget to hit save. And then you can click back to object level mapping options, and you can then, so that way you don't have to create an individual mapping for each field, you just create a mapping, individual mappings for each role, and you can have multiple fields in them. And again, this one can go both ways. Opportunity status only goes one way. It just goes from the CPQ quote to update the opportunity on the CRM side. And it looks sort of like this. I'll go ahead and click on Add New on that one. And what you'll see here is a list of all of the available statuses that a CPQ quote can have. And as the implementation team, you can add new statuses if you like. You can say, I have a lot of custom statuses in here. Let's say, for example, that on the CPQ side, I have a status called preparing, and the opportunity status would be, let's say, in process or something like that. Now on this one, I can't even come up with a pick list, right? I can't see anything unless I'm actually mapped to a real CRM. But ordinarily, I would see a drop-down list here with all of the possible opportunity statuses that are available on in C4C. So I won't be able to save this because this is a required field. So I'll just cancel it. But so this one's pretty straightforward. We'll say cancel there. The last two here, the price book market mappings, to show you this one really quickly. Again, you can have price books both on the CRM side and on the CPQ side. So if I click add new here, you can see that this is a list of the price books in CPQ. And again, these are price books that can be customized and new ones can be added. So for example, I might choose USA in dollars. And then again, you can look up the price books in your CRM by clicking CRM lookup. And again, I'm just going to see an empty window here, but you would just see a list of them there. So you can map your price books that way. Now, the last one is more or less read-only. User mappings, here's what user mappings is all about. Remember I was saying earlier that the most common usage of CPQ is to provide a seamless integration with your CRM. So when somebody's already logged into their CRM, they click on create a quote, it opens up CPQ in an iframe and it creates a user mapping for them so that they're automatically logged in. They don't have to log in again, right? So it's just using single sign-on. This list of user mappings is a list of the CPQ accounts that are mapped to the CRM users, and therefore you really don't want to change these. I would say the only thing you might do is you might use it as a place where you can just check to see whether someone has ever actually logged into CPQ, right? So, you know, if they say, oh yeah, I enter quotes all the time, you can say, well, I don't see you here. It doesn't look like you even have an account or a mapping. Also, you can use this for troubleshooting. If somebody's having trouble, you know, they can log into their CRM with no problem, but they can't log into CPQ. You can come in here and delete their user mapping so that the next time they log in, it'll recreate it for them. So for the most part, you can look at this, you can search it, but unless you're troubleshooting something, you don't want to make any changes to it. All right, so those are our custom integrations, or our not really so much custom, but sort of preset, but not C4C or S4 ERP settings. So before I move on, let me jump back over here to. So this is what I just went through, really, these 5 mappings. So before I move on, does anybody have any questions? Okay. So the next topic, and this is our last topic, is custom actions. Now, as you probably know, no matter how standard your system, there's probably going to be some other requirement, some sort of custom demand that's not part of the CPQ standard software version or not part of your CRM's standard implementation. And you're going to need to create some sort of custom action. Custom actions are give you the ability to create flexible integration with other external systems. Doesn't have to be with the CRM, doesn't have to be with an ERP, it can be with anything. The scripting language used by CPQ is always Iron Python. It is the only scripting language that CPQ uses, which is not too tough because it is open source and it's basically Python. And you can use them for a lot of different things, but what I'm going to show you is an example of we're just going to do a really, really quick, easy one-line piece of scripting code to create a custom action. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how you can create a custom action and then use it in a quote workflow where you can set it up to take effect before or after some action. And what we'll do is we'll set up a custom action that when the CPQ quote or right after the CPQ quote is saved, the CRM opportunity is also updated. So we're not going to do anything fancy with the code. We're just going to, I just want to show you what it looks like within CPQ. All right, so let's take a look at, first of all, where custom actions are. So I'm going to jump back into CPQ, and I'm going to close CRM integration. So now you can use custom actions for other things as well. You don't have to use them for integration. But custom actions can be found here under the Develop menu. We have all of our different scripts, and we also have an area where you can select custom actions. I'm going to go to custom actions, and you can see I already have one custom action set up here, but I'm going to add a new one. Okay, there we go. Let's see. And the first thing I'm going to do is give it a name. So let's call this update opportunity. And we'll call this script, so I know I'm using script for this. I'm going to say that I'm going to place this on the quote page, but you're not actually going to be able to see it, as you'll see. I also, and because I'm not displaying it in the quote, I'm just going to be attaching it as a post action. I don't have to give it an order within the quote. It's not going to be a primary action, so I'll turn that off. And because I can't see it, I don't have to give it an image or a Lightning UI image. I'm also not going to give it any conditions, but I could add conditions here. I can add conditions, global conditions, as well as conditions pre-action and post-action. What I'm going to do is go down to the bottom where the scripting code is, and I'm just going to post or paste this little snippet. It's not really a snippet, but this little piece of code in here. Right, so very, very simple. It's not really, it's so simple, it's probably not even something you'd use in the real world. It's just updating the opportunity. Now, when you're using IronPython, you can see here what I mean. There's only one choice for the script engine. All right, I don't need to force proxy generation here. You can check the syntax, but for the most part, it's probably going to be fine, right? Because it's checking the syntax. It's not checking to make sure that your script is actually going to be valid. So I'm going to go ahead and just save this. So I've now created this custom action called update opportunity. All right. Now, where I would put that would be in the workflow. So I'm going to go to the workflow approval section over here. Now, if you have been through the CPQ e-learning, especially the intermediate class, you've probably seen how workflows and statuses work. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through that part. I'm just going to go into the workflow, and I'm going to add this to this custom action as a post action to saving the quote if it is. Let's see, open, or let's see, where's my other one? Yeah, let's use open. Okay, so if the quote is open and we save it, I want to add the script to the end of it after I saved it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the little pencil here to edit this step. And you'll notice over here we have all our actions. The action we're going to be modifying is save the quote. Over here on the right-hand side is where I can add my custom action. So I can add it during a notification, before the action, or after the action. So I'm going to add it after the action. So I'm going to add it to post actions. So I'll be adding it to the third edit button. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down to the save quote action, which is already here. There it is. You can see it's already checked. It's already enabled. And now I'm going to go over to the post action and click on edit. And I'm going to see here a list of all of my custom actions, including the one I just created, which is down at the bottom, update opportunity. All right, so I'm going to select that action, move it over to the right side. As you can see, I can add as many actions as I want. I'm going to click update. And as soon as I update it, you'll see a little flag show up here next to the edit button, which tells me that there is some code associated with the post action. However, don't forget to go down to the bottom and hit the save button. Now, you wouldn't really see the end result of this in the user interface because I didn't add it as its own action. The one thing that you'll see here, let me go ahead and just go to Exit Setup, and I'll just open a quote. Let's just say here I'm going to load an existing quote, like this guy right here, is that if the status were in open, in the status open, which at the moment it's not, when I click Save Quote, as soon as the quote is saved, then that action will take place and the opportunity will also be updated. So that's basically what we've done. Okay, so I know that was a really quick run through and it was pretty basic, but before I move on, does anybody have any questions? All right, then I have a question for you. Again, you can answer this one in the chat. What is the scripting language that we use for creating custom actions in CPQ? Excellent. Oh, we got some good quick answers. Iron Python. Excellent. That's right. Yeah, so, okay. So we have enough time here to cover one more quick topic, and this one is really just kind of want to just give you a little bit of an overview. Other types of integration that I haven't really talked about yet, although I did mention before that, and I'll just show you both of these. There are a couple of other SAP Sales Cloud products that came over with the new suite for SAP Sales Cloud. One of them is called Enablement, which is a portal and document storage application, which is kind of a nice, very nice tool that would allow a sales team, for example, to assign each customer to their own portal where they can see all their quotes and opportunities and so on. As well as PDFs and marketing materials, so it's a very nice. Basically, Enablement is a sales enablement tool. Thunderbridge Artificial Intelligence, or Thunderbridge AI, is in an application that is also came over with SAP Sales Cloud that allows the system to display. It uses artificial intelligence to take current products on a quote and make other product and pricing recommendations based on past sales. So you can also integrate with those. I also showed you a little bit earlier that you can integrate with an e-signing applications. So let me just show you really quickly what that looks like. So I'm going to go back into Setup and just close Workflow Approval. It's back under Providers, kind of like where we started, except this time when I go to Providers, you'll see here we have our e-signing applications. You can see that I've already activated DocuSign. So if I click on that one, you can see that what all I need to do here is put in my integration username and password, as well as the REST API URL, which in this case was just provided in this case by the person who handles our DocuSign account. You can also put in a default email subject and body, which is kind of nice because you can say, thanks very much for, considering ABC company. Here's your quote. Please sign this within 6 hours or something like that. You'll notice, by the way, here it says integration turned on is true. That is, I'm just going to save this. That's the reason that DocuSign here is lit up and Adobe Sign and Enablement are not. So most of these, the integration is pretty straightforward in that you just have to have, a URL of some sort and username and password. Okay, so before we wrap up, does anybody have any other questions? Okay, so really good question. Again, one that I probably end up punting again. It's a good question. Could you please throw some light on CPQ e-commerce integration? I'm glad you asked that. I am actually not quite there with CPQ e-commerce yet because I came over with CPQ with SAP Sales Cloud. I wouldn't be able to help you very much on that one, unfortunately, but why don't we go ahead and add that also to the list of ones that we're going to follow up on? And I'm going to give you guys my email address in just a moment. So you'll have that as well. But I'm glad I am glad you asked that. Another question here, where do we see single sign-on setup? So single sign-on setup, there isn't really a single sign-on setup, because basically what happens is as soon as you enable that integration, that's where single sign-on takes place. You can always do, if you need to do a custom SSO setup, you can do that using a custom action and a custom page using either web services or something like that. But otherwise, as far as the built-in part of the application goes, it's just a matter of activating the integration. Okay, good questions. Any others? Okay. If you do have any other questions as we go, what I'm gonna do from here is just go into the wrap up. So as you have other questions, go ahead and put them up in the chat window, and I will cover them and say come in. So quick review. First of all, set up your CRM integration first. Before you set it up, you're going to need to have all your URLs so you know whether or not you need to do any customization to your endpoints, and you'll want to have your CRM administrator username and passwords, or usernames and passwords, I should say. If you have any special processes that can't be set up using the graphical user interface, you can use custom actions for those and add them to the workflows. The scripting language is IronPython, as you heard, and you can also integrate CPQ with quite a few other applications, including eSign applications, enablement, CLM, and Thunderbridge AI.